So hi guys, welcome to our first set of notes that I expect you to take in a notebook or otherwise. I know I have told you we are going to be starting a digital notebook. As of right now, I have so many students that don't have computers yet. We're going to hold off on starting our digital notebook until I let you know in further videos. But for right now, I do need you to take out a notebook or take out some paper so that you can actually write down your set of notes because you'll have to refer to them for your first assignment this week. So anyway, we have 3 PowerPoints we're going to discuss this week. This is the first of the series. So let's go ahead and get started. So the first part, I would like you to write this down. Our key concept is that biology is the study of all forms of life. As the video is going through, if you need time to write things down, just go ahead and pause me, and then I'll start talking again to you on the next slide. So as you progress through it, pause it, write down your notes, do what you need to do, and then resume when you're ready. Okay, our vocabulary for this section. You do not need to write any of the vocabulary. It is listed for you in our weekly overview folder, but just know that these are the terms that you're going to be writing down definitions for as we progress through this PowerPoint. The first one being biosphere. We've got biodiversity, species, biology, and science. Also, please don't write this down either. These are our main ideas. These are the things that we're going to cover during this PowerPoint. And again, these are addressed in your weekly overview folder. We've got Earth is home to an incredible diversity of life. Biology is a scientific study of all forms of life. Humans have studied living things throughout history. And then lastly, the essential questions. Again, please don't write these down right now. You will be answering these at the end of the PowerPoint. This will be part of your assignment for this section 1.1. You'll be answering these, and I'll refer back to these as we're discussing the PowerPoint here. So our first essential question, how are species related to the concept of biodiversity? Second one, how does technology affect the advancement of science? And the third one, what societal needs were addressed by science in the ancient world? And again, they sound very confusing, but we're going to break them down as we go. So what is science? Well, science is the knowledge obtained by observing natural events and conditions in order to discover facts and formulate laws or principles that can be verified or tested. So if you think about science, in science, we're always noticing things. We're making observations. And actually, you do this on a daily basis from the time you wake up in the morning to the time you go to sleep. You're looking around, you're making observations, you're noticing things that are going on. In science, we take it a little bit further. We ask, why is it happening? What can we do to figure out why it happens? Or we want to test why we think something is happening. So scientists run experiments to discover more facts about what they observed, and then they use those facts to formulate laws or principles. All right, biology. Again, this is one of our vocabulary words. So if we look at the word biology, we can break that down into the root words bio, that little root word means life, and then logi, which means the study of. So if you really think about biology, biology is the study of life or the study of living things. So our long definition for this is biology is a scientific study of living things and their interactions with their environment. As we go through this course, what I'm going to do is break down a lot of the words that we study, just because if you know the root words, it's going to help you know the definitions for them, and it's also going to help you become a really great test taker, because if you get asked a question where you don't really know the answer and you're not quite sure, but you see some of the root words, you might be able to eliminate answers or pick the right answer just based on knowing parts of the word. All right, so our first main idea is that Earth is home to an incredible diversity of life. And I want you to think about that word diversity. I know you've heard it a million times, but what does it actually mean? So think about it for just a second. Diversity, it just means differences. And when we talk about life, we're going to be talking about the different forms of life. So Earth is home to an incredible diversity, a huge variety of life, all different forms. And the biosphere, the living sphere, bio living, includes all the living things and all the places they're found. And that biosphere can be divided further into ecosystems. So if we think about the biosphere is really where everywhere that life exists on the planet. Now, when we talk about the biosphere and we're talking about dividing it up into ecosystems, we have 3 different categories of ecosystems. We have the ecosystems that we can find on the land, okay? Those, if you remember back to middle school, you talked about the different parts of the planet, and the land portions were called the lithosphere, the rock portions of the earth. We also have ecosystems found in the water, and we can have saltwater and freshwater environments and ecosystems. And if you remember, we used the word hydrosphere when we talked about the water parts of our planet. And then lastly, we can find life throughout different portions of the atmosphere. And the atmosphere is just the air that surrounds the planet. And in those lower levels, you can find a lot of life as well. So every part of the biosphere is connected to every other part of the Earth. So again, we're connected to the lithosphere. We have ecosystems there, the hydrosphere, the atmosphere, and we can divide that further into those ecosystems like desert, tundra, rainforest, coral reef, tide pool, all of those different things. So anywhere you find life is considered the biosphere, the living sphere. So going back to, and actually I'm going to go through this with you guys. So basically, if you look at this slide here, biodiversity, again, bio, life, diversity, differences, different forms. So if we break apart that word, biodiversity really just means the variety of life, the different forms of life. And if you look at this picture of the globe that I've got down there for you, you're going to notice these red lines across the globe. And for each of these lines are representing the biodiversity found on our planet. And if you look towards the North Pole and the South Pole, you're going to notice those lines are further apart. But as you move towards the middle of the Earth, where we would find the equator, those lines get a lot closer together. That means there's a lot more biodiversity there along the equator. And why is that? Well, the temperature is warmer there. So the warmer it is, the more tropical it is, the easier it is for things to survive. So if we look at our planet as a whole, our biodiversity on our planet is greater in areas with consistently warm temperatures. So biodiversity is much higher near the equator. And so if we look at the points that I have here on the slide, I say that biodiversity generally increases from the poles to the equator, and we can see that based on those red lines here. And biodiversity is greater in areas with consistently warm temperatures. And guys, I'm going to tell you right now, this is a very common thing for them to ask you on the EOC exam. At the end of the year, they might have this picture for you or something similar to this, and they might ask you where on the planet would you find a place with the most biodiversity, or where can we find the most biodiversity? And the answer would be near the equator, because it's consistently warm there and it's got a very tropical environment. And actually, most of our rainforests are found right along that equator. Next thing, a species. And this is, again, one of our vocabulary words. A species is one particular type of living thing. And in general, only members of the same species can interbreed to reproduce. That's in general. There are some exceptions to this, but for the most part, what we need to know is that only members of the same species can interbreed and make more of themselves. And on our planet, we have identified about 2 million different living species. And that's only what we've identified so far. There's still things that we are discovering every day. And there's things that have gone extinct in our lifetime. And there's a whole fossil record full of things that were at once alive on our planet. And so if you think about our planet as a whole, we have a ton of living things, many different varieties. So that leads me to our first essential question. And I asked you, how is the word species related to the concept of biodiversity? And if you think about it, a species is one particular type of living thing. And biodiversity was the variety of life or the different forms of life found on our planet. So if you think about how species are related to biodiversity, well, you have to think, well, on Earth, we've identified over 2 million different living things. Is that a huge amount of biodiversity? Well, yeah, it sure is. So when you're talking about that question, or we think about that question, you can say, well, on our planet, we have identified more than 2 million different species, which is a huge variety, which means on our planet, we have a huge amount of biodiversity. All right, this is our last slide for this PowerPoint. Now, this one you can summarize for yourself. You don't need to write all of the different things on here, but I just want to talk about them for just a moment. So one of our main ideas was humans have studied living things throughout history. And the study of living things began long before the invention of computers, microscopes, or other scientific tools and techniques. If we look back at things like cave drawings and things that happened way in ancient times, we have records of what people did and what people studied. And those ancient civilizations actually studied biology. And what was the purpose of that? The whole purpose was for survival. They needed things to help themselves survive in their environments, just like what we do today. We have advances in technology to make our lives easier and help us survive as a species. And so they studied things like agriculture, growing crops for food. They studied things like the domestication of animals, keeping them and raising them for food and for furs. They studied things like herbal medications, and that was all trial and error. Do you think they knew what they should take if they were feeling a headache or have a pain or an ache? No, but they had to try different things. And all of that knowledge was passed down from generation to generation. They even studied things like the human body. We have so many advances now in medicine because of that knowledge that's been passed down from generation to generation. And so as our technology has increased, our knowledge and understanding of science has also increased. And that again is one of our essential questions. So again, the ancient civilizations studied many, many things, and all of that knowledge has been passed down. And as technology increases, so does our knowledge. So if we take a look at our essential questions, these are going to be on Schoology for you. And you need to talk about these three things. How are species related to the concept of biodiversity? How does technology affect the advancement of science? And then what needs, or what societal needs, were addressed by science in the ancient world? What were the things that they needed to survive? And again, that's going to be part of your assignment for section 1.1. So hopefully you have taken your notes now. If you have any questions about this PowerPoint, please contact me. Let me know what you need. All right, guys, I'll see you in the next video.